What's up, guys? I just dropped off my stepson at school, and we've been having some behavioral issues with him. Just saying inappropriate things, saying inappropriate things, thinking that they're funny. Just like really inappropriate, like downright racist comments, but he thought they were funny. And he doesn't understand the impact that type of comment could have. He didn't use any racial slur. He just kind of used like implications of racial discrimination. And I don't think he understands the consequence of it. And my stepson is on the autism spectrum, and I don't know where the line is where you have to hold them accountable, but also take into consideration like that my son has a disability, and how much of the disability is not helping him understand the social impact of what he's saying. It's so difficult to find that line of like knowing what he understands and what he doesn't, holding him accountable and explaining to him why it was wrong. And it's just really hard to find that line and to communicate that message and really gauge if he's understanding the message that you're communicating. It's so difficult to be a parent, I came into his life when he was 5, and he was nonverbal, and he had a lot of difficulties then, and he still does, but now they're different. He's becoming a teenager. He's 11 now. And a lot of the stuff that he got away with as a young, kid, he's not going to be able to get away with as a teenager or growing into a young adult. So it's very critical that I communicate these lessons to him now, before, he's older, and then it's harder for him to learn because he's into the habit of just doing these things without consequence. And it's just so hard to find that line and understand whether or not you're making the best decision on as far as your accountability, like how far do you take it? But parenting is the hardest thing that I've done, but also the most rewarding thing that I've done, because it's helped me step up to a level of manhood, of responsibility that I just wasn't even considering when I was alone. Like, who cares? Like, I'm gonna be here regardless. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Do whatever you want. No responsibilities, no consequences. But when you have someone there looking at your every move, learning from your every decision, mirroring everything that you do, you really take a step back and like reflect on whether the behaviors that you're participating in are something that you want them to do or would be happy if they did or not. And honestly, the biggest parenting tip that I could ever give, just from my experience, is talk is cheap, man. It's lead by example. All the things that you say are critical, right? The things that you're teaching your kids, the understanding that you're trying to give them, yeah, it's important. But more important, sorry, I'm over here driving, trying to cross the street. More important than what you teach and what you're preaching, what you're saying is what you're doing. You know, if you don't want your kid to drink or abuse alcohol when they're an adult, then you shouldn't be drinking and abusing alcohol, at least in front of them. I straight up quit drinking and smoking weed because I had somebody there watching me, and I knew that I didn't want them to do any of this. So how am I gonna say, hey, don't do this, make sure you're not doing this, and then on the weekend I'm over here doing this stuff? You know, it didn't make sense to me. It made me feel like a hypocrite, and it is hypocritical. You know, if you're gonna teach something, if you're gonna preach something, you need to embody that teaching. You need to live it. You need to lead by example. That's the best way of leading, is lead by example. A great leader could even not say anything and just do things a certain way, and your team or the people beneath you or next to you or watching you, they're gonna learn by what you're doing. They're gonna see what you're doing, and they're gonna put it together. So when it comes to parenting, man, talk is cheap. I think it has some value. You need to explain things, right, to your kids. Sometimes they get it. Most of the time they kind of are listening or not listening, or don't understand the consequences, and don't understand the importance of the message that you're trying to give. But ultimately, if you're embodying those things, if you're the living proof of those things, they're gonna see it and learn it long term. It's gonna be embedded in their mind. You know, when they look back, they're gonna be like, oh, this is what my dad did. This is how my dad behaved, or mom and dad. And this is the result that they got, you know? If you don't want your kid to be a fat slob, don't be a fat slob. Stop chowing down on all kinds of junk food in front of them. I'm not saying don't ever eat junk food, but I'm just saying the habits that you're having daily reflect who you are, and reflect essentially who you want them to be. Because you're telling them it's okay to do this. It's okay. I used to have some friends over, and I would have a drink with them, and it wouldn't be like some crazy party. We would just have a few drinks. But then I realized, like, hey man, like, I see all the empty bottles, and I see like how kind of obnoxious we're being, and how I didn't want them to come out and watch, like, oh, go to the next room. And that was like because I was ashamed of that. I was ashamed for them to see those things. So I was like, go over there, don't look. But as a father, I should be like, no, watch me. Check this out. Look how I do this. Right? So that they can mimic you, that, you know, they can see that, mirror you. And you're gonna make mistakes, and that's human nature. We're just gonna make mistakes. But I was telling my son today, good men aren't perfect, you know. A good man is gonna make mistakes just like any other man, but the difference is that he's gonna correct them and make up for them. He's gonna be honest with himself and say, I fucked up, and he's gonna fix it. And he's going to do everything in his power to not repeat that type of mistake, or that same exact mistake. And it might happen again, but you decrease its impact every time, and you increase your discipline every time that it happens. You know, hopefully you can get it done once. You know, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you stop doing that mistake, and you progress forward. But it's not always going to happen like that. But that's also important, is that you're honest with your kids, that, you know, you're not perfect and they don't necessarily have to be perfect. But they do have to acknowledge their mistakes, and they do have to understand when they've made a mistake and the impact that they've had on others due to that mistake, not just the impact that they have. Because sometimes they might make a mistake and it might not affect them in any way, because they're just like, well, I didn't care about it. But you have to kind of relate to them why it affects other people and how it affects other people and their role in their community and in their family. Because once they have a role, they have more of a responsibility. But being a parent is hard, man. Being a dad is the hardest thing I've ever done. And like I said, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. But there's a lot of hard days in between those good feelings. Lots of hard days. And sometimes we're hard on ourselves, but you gotta understand that if you're doing your best, you're doing your best to move forward. Then that's all you can do, you know. Take everything as it comes and correct it as it comes, and just do your best to lead by example. I think that's just the main thing, is if you're leading by example, if you're showing the result. If you tell your kid, you know, don't spend your money on stupid stuff. Save your money. Are you, you know, not spending on stupid stuff, saving your money, and then are you showing the result of that? You know, I was telling my son, like, we just got a new car. And I'm like, you think somebody just gave me that? You think somebody just handed this over and said, hey, you deserve this? No, I had to go to work every day that I didn't want to, just like he goes to school when he doesn't want to. And I had to not spend money on, you know, things that I enjoy, save, and achieve something that I wanted to. And it's a result of the positive behaviors that I was implementing. And I was telling them, you know, your negative behaviors are just going to lead you down a negative path. But you have to show the result. It's very important that they see a result in your life so that they can, you know, they have something to look at and be like, oh, okay, I get it. It's not just you talking. That's why I say talk is cheap, because it has some value, but it doesn't hold much weight in their eyes, because I think kids learn by what they see more than by what they hear, you know. If they see something and they can hold it and touch it, they're going to understand it a little better than just like some philosophical concept that you're telling them, you know. But anyways, I just wanted to share that. I've been having a rough few days with, you know, this incident, and I've been kind of down on myself for it. But that doesn't help either, you know. That just puts you in a negative space, and it might affect your partner, it might affect your other kids that aren't necessarily involved in this incident. And as a father, you got to stay on point, you know. You got to stay on point in all areas with all relationships. It's not just one or two people, it's the whole family dynamic. You have to have this positive outlook so that you can be somebody that they lean on, you know. And that's the hard part about being a dad, but that's what I've been called to do. That's what I've been chosen to do. I feel like, yeah, this is my choice, but also is my destiny. This is something that I was supposed to be, you know. That's how I see it anyway. But yeah, life is hard. Being a dad is hard, but we still grind and we still get after it. And like I said, the best thing we can do is lead by example. All right, later, guys.